Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Joy Phillips. I'm the founder of World Childless Week, which is now in its 5th year. And I'm joined tonight by 4 wonderful ladies, all authors, all of completely different styles of books, which is really interesting. And I think they're all going to have a different viewpoint and different aspect on what we've done. So Jessica, Tessa, Cristina and Yvonne, thank you so much for coming in tonight and joining me. Really appreciate you all being here. I'm going to go around one by one and ask you just to explain for everybody here a little bit about your book, because not everybody will have read it. Not everyone will know what you've written about. So if we start with Jessica, please.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks also for bringing us all together. Well, I've actually written 2 books. My first book is called The Pursuit of Motherhood, and it was what I describe as my literary memoir, I guess. It was my journey through 11 rounds of IVF, what ultimately became 11 rounds of unsuccessful IVF, although I did have multiple miscarriages during that time. My second book is called 21 Miles. I like to think of it more as inspirational memoir. It's about coming out of treatment. I basically decided that I needed to do something different with my life, having given a decade of it to what I call Project Baby. So I decided I was going to swim the English Channel. I wasn't a swimmer. I had no idea what was involved, but it was completely life-changing. It was so hard. And the only sort of redeeming thing about it was that you basically get to eat as much as you like, because the only way to keep warm is to have a bit of human padding. So I wrote to 21 famous women and asked if they would meet and eat with me to help me get fat, to swim the channel, and answer the question, does motherhood make you happy? And that is what my second book is about. Thank you.
Tessa, would you like to go next, please?
Yeah, sure. Again, thanks very much, Steph, for getting us all together for this. My book, Dear You, A Letter to My Unborn Children, shameless plug alert, is a letter. I wanted people to get me really and understand me. And I originally wrote a memoir about my infertility journey, and it just wasn't really working. And around my early 40s, I did actually write a little letter to my unborn children. It was quite a gushy missive, sort of 2 pages of A4 about what a fabulous time we would have had. And I sort of hit upon the idea of turning that letter into a book where I could really pretend to be my imagined children's mum and tell them all about me and my life, and also the things I wanted to share with them, the things I wanted. I think a lot of us who are childless feel we haven't got anyone to pass a legacy down to, little family anecdotes, little family traditions. So I used the book to sort of really indulge myself and pretend to be a mum to those children. And so that's how the book came about.
Thank you. Cristina.
Yeah, hi everyone, and dare I say happy World Childless Week 2021 to everyone. Yes, I'm the author of, again, shameless plug, Childlessness in the Age of Communication, Deconstructing Silence. So this is the academic book among those presented in the panel. By academic book, I want to reassure you, it's not an unreadable book, so it's extremely accessible. It's academic because I'm an academic, and so I felt I wanted to place it with an academic publisher. The reason, as I will be probably speaking later about, is also that I wanted to place childlessness on the research agenda beyond the medical issues. So this book is a hybrid book in the sense that I knew that there was research about childlessness, mostly medical or of a demographic nature, about populations and who is fertile, who is not fertile, how many children do we have. And there are also very personal and touching stories. And without telling a very long story, for a long time, I didn't know I was writing a book. For a long time, I didn't know what I was writing. At a certain point, I thought, okay, is this a personal story, or is this an academic book? Is this analysis? Is this research? And I thought, well, why do I need to choose when I can write both in the same book? And I thought that this would be something useful that would be useful to all the childless out there. And basically it tells my own story, it tells the stories of other women I interviewed, but it also refers to the existing research that there is about childlessness. It deals with with uncovering why there is so much silence around childlessness, especially in the age of communication. But also it tells you what it feels and what it means, how it feels and what it means to be childless in a society that revolves around family.
Thank you. And last but not least, Yvonne.
So hi. My baby is called Dreaming of a Life Unlived. And I remember when the idea of her was conceived. So I was doing the Gateway Women's Plan B mentorship program and being on the program with, I think, 12 or 14 other women, listening to their stories. And the common theme was, you know, no one else out there is listening to us. No one out there understands. Everyone's trying to fix us. And I remember thinking, damn it, I just want us to be heard. And I wanted to give us our voices back. So I remember standing up going, I'm going to write a book about this because I want us to be heard. And then promptly sat down and thought, I don't know why I'm doing this. And as it went along, I fortunately had the support of a coach who really helped me to put this together. So we got 14, I think there's 12 or 14 stories, got the women together who so graciously contributed to the book, all shared their stories, so many different aspects of us grieving, coming to be known as childless women and us grieving our journeys, and then finding a fulfilling life without children. I really wanted other childless women to know that there's hope, because society wants to give us this false hope of, if you don't have children, you know, you're nothing, so you have to keep trying, you have to keep doing this, you have to, whatever they think we should do. So I wanted people in our situations to know that it's okay and there is hope of finding a fulfilling life without children. I wanted people in our positions to know there's help out there. And I also wanted the wider society to hear our stories and to hear how difficult it is and hear what we need instead of what they think we need. So that's how my book came about.
Thank you. It's really interesting though, because you all do have different aspects to the way you've gone for the books that you've written. And it just shows that we always say that we've got so many different stories.
Yeah.
And even in the way you wrote your own story, they're completely different. You know, and it's like with Tess, yours is very much about your journey. Jessica, you go out and actually speak to lots of people. Yvonne, you've got stories. Cristina is academic. Do you know what I mean? So it's really interesting that you mix the academia sort of side of it with your own personal story as well. So you look at it in a completely different, way and with a different mindset, I think, than most of us would do. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I would say, Steph, it's so important that there are different stories out there, because I think there is often, you know, because actually, I mean, we may come on to talk about this. It's really, it's been really difficult to get these stories out into the world, and there's a tendency to think that one story isn't enough, you know, by the publishing industry, and yet all our stories are different and we need to hear as many as possible. I think that's really, really important.
And can I also say something that I think that this is also part of our function in society, to view things differently. And I think especially with my book, I wanted to present also the research that exists about childlessness from a different perspective, because we have all this medical discourse, all this pathologization of childlessness as it's a medical problem. But I wanted to point out that there are existential issues, that childlessness doesn't stop when you stop trying. Childlessness continues. It's a political issue. It's about how you're represented in the media. It's about relationships. It's about identity. So all of this, it's a whole research agenda. So it's not just about fertility, infertility. There is so much more to this.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Cristina, because what I've noticed is that there's only two reasons why we're childless. It's we chose not to have children, or we couldn't have, and even the couldn't have isn't really kind of acknowledged and explored, because the couldn't have, there are solutions to that. So therefore, how can you make a choice not to go down the road of continuously trying because it's out there and you can do it, and what's your problem? You couldn't really have wanted it because you stopped. So I felt like there was no decision. We couldn't make decisions on this journey. So, you know, I think having the different aspects of this is really pushes out, there are reasons why we're here, but within that, we gave ourselves permission to stop a part of the journey to be able to heal and move in a different direction. And that was okay too. And I think it's important for women coming behind us to hear that as well, because society wants to keep pushing you to keep trying, when actually I've done enough and I can't do any more. And we need to be okay with those decisions as well, let alone the others who actually didn't have the opportunity to try because they didn't meet partners and, you know, have other different stories around their journey as well.
Sometimes it's just the decision of saying, okay, I'm not going to try and just keep looking for Mr. Right. I've got to realise that he's not there. So that's still a decision without even getting to the point of trying to conceive.
That's true, yeah. And not berating ourselves for it, because we tend to then blame ourselves. We didn't meet Mr. Right, so there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me, so I didn't do this. Or whether, you know, there's so much self-blame on this. And it is important for people to hear that actually that narrative doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And I'd like to pick up on a point you mentioned, Cristina, about the silence that's associated with childlessness. And I think for most of us, obviously, we've written books, we wanted to be heard. I'm the sort of the dinosaur in the building. I had my fertility treatment about 30 years ago, and it was very much a taboo to talk about it. Nobody did. And my friends and family knew I was having treatment, but it was always a bit hushed and sort of, and I think there is still, as you said, even in this world of communication being so easy, there's still an uncomfortable awkwardness in talking about it. People still assume their fertility. They assume that they're going to be able to have children. I mean, I'm guilty of expecting the young people in my life to be able to go and have children with ease. And I mean, look at the experience I had. So I think just, giving a voice to people that there is, this is what happens to some of us. And we can still make a pretty wonderful life. So, yeah.
And Tess, first of all, can I say that you are not a dinosaur?
Well, I'm sick. I just turned 60, so
you're the best looking dinosaur. But secondly, I mean, just to pick up on what you just said, with my first book, because I was so secretive about my infertility for so many years, and then I started writing about it, and I seriously thought when I'd written the book that I was going to publish it under a pseudonym, because I just was too ashamed to come out as me. And then because I wanted, and I subsequently went on to use my book to campaign to try and improve things in the world of fertility and infertility, I sort of realized that I could only do that if I was prepared to stand up and be me. And actually what I found, and it'd be really interesting to know whether you all experience the same, is that coming out as me so publicly, within the first few weeks of my book coming out, I was on This Morning with Holly and Philip, it was just ridiculous how public I became. But it was so, to use that terrible word, healing. It actually reduced the toxicity and the shame by actually saying, this is my story, this is me. I don't know if you all felt the same.
Can I jump onto the toxicity, because that's a metaphor that I actually use to express what effect actually writing this book and telling my story among the stories of the women I interviewed had on me. And it's like you have been injected poison by all these messages that we keep on being bombarded by every day about what it means to be happy, what it means to be successful, what it means to be realized. And of course, we don't fit with this image. And so every single one of these messages becomes one drop of poison. And so I really felt like I had all this poison. And the more I talked about it, the more I could get the poison out. So I really feel like the healing actually came from getting this out. And if I can say something more about the silence, because in the book I actually analyze in a way that is absolutely accessible for everyone to read, so it's not a complicated thing. But yeah, there are reasons for this silence, and you know, I talk about all of them. But yeah, first of all, we don't talk about it because it's so painful. So it might seem obvious, but even when I was talking about my own grief, or when I was interviewing other women, you can't actually talk because it's so painful. And that's the first reason. Then yeah, why is it so painful? Because of these messages, because we keep on comparing ourselves, our personal story of failed parents with these ideas of success, happiness that are being denied to us. And yeah, and then it's important also that our story, not being able to have a child, despite all the technology that we have at our disposal, it's a story that nobody wants to hear, because it's really absolutely terrifying. Nobody wants to hear that there are cases where technology cannot solve it, and you just have to accept it. There is no way out. And yeah, and finally, among other things, there is politics. Yeah, because we cannot speak out. Nobody wants to hear to us. To hear our voices, then also politicians, they don't know what our needs are, and so we are not represented anywhere. And so that's again underlines why it's important to speak out and to break this silence.
Yeah. Going on from the silence, I'm going to ask you, because obviously when you get your stories down on paper into a book, they're still quite private, because there's still something you can sort of hold and like put in there. But then suddenly you're realizing when you start publishing it, people want you to speak verbally. And like going on TV or the radio, is that like a jump that suddenly shocks you, or because you have to speak out in a different sense to a real public audience? What about with you, Jessica? Because obviously suddenly you were saying it was so intense that you saw that change around. Definitely.
I mean, I do think there are so many answers, so many things that question sort of generates for me, because I think I don't know if the others feel this as well, but when you're writing, one of the most wonderful things about writing a book is that I feel it's like, it's your safe space, you know, it's like a tower that you can go to where you're safe and in control, and, you know, when it's working, it's beautiful. And then you give it to the world. And on the one hand, there is nothing as validating and rewarding as when people read your writing and write back to you and say, you spoke what I felt, you know, or like, your book has changed my life. I mean, like, that is just, I've had so many of those messages, or, you know, like, you've inspired me to take on my own physical challenge, or, but there's a weird thing that also happens, which is once you give it to the world, it's sort of out of your hands, and then you have to start talking about it, and you're only then working out what it is. And also, you know, whilst my books are based on my life, they are true, they're absolutely 100% true, they are also creatively written, you know, so you're also you know, recognize, you're sort of working out, what is this, you know, you see this with even, you know, like, I'm watching a documentary with Bernadine Evaristo at the moment, and she says, you know, she only realizes now what that book is, you know, now that she's talking about it. So it's a sort of really, you know, organic process, I think, and it is hard, just to summarize, in talking about something that is so difficult, you know, at times.
Yvonne, you were smiling. I was going to say, I'm sure you've got something to say.
Yeah, I was resonating with a lot of that. I think there's a sense that the book takes on a life of its own. So you kind of give birth to it, but you don't know how it will shape, how it will look, how it will develop, how it will grow, what it will become. So there's something around releasing it to the universe and letting it be what it will be. And I remember, for me, I started talking about my journey before my book came out, and it was kind of close to the time. And I remember the first time I spoke, I was hyperventilating before I got on that stage. And I think it was in International Women's Day 2016. And I just couldn't believe what I was doing, because I thought, all of a sudden, everybody's going to know the shame that I was holding on to. And it felt huge. And prior to that, I remember considering writing under a pseudonym, because I thought, if everyone knew it was me, then, you know, negative stuff will come back at me, and people say I didn't deserve to be a mum. And part of what I considered at the time to be shameful was having 2 terminations in my 20s, which I don't consider that now at all. And it was a lot of work to get to the place where I could say these were decisions I made and own that. And I was slowly doing that as I was writing my story. So part of that was then leave that part of my story out, because I was too ashamed of it. And I knew I couldn't do it, because it would be a lie, then my story would be a lie, because part of my difficulty in grieving was because I felt this shame. So it really needed to be there, and it really needed to be under my name. And I found putting it on paper gave me compassion for myself, because I was able to see the Yvonne that I couldn't see that was in here. So when I could see her, I could give her more compassion, and also could start to release her to the world. And I remember when I first spoke about it, and somebody coming up to me, and, you know, I had similar experience to Jessica, you're talking my life, you could have been telling my story, you know, thank you for saying that, because I too have had a termination and I feel shame from it. And I found once I could own it and release it, it gave permission for other women to own their stories too. Not everyone's going to go out there and be public speakers by any means, but just being able to own it for themselves, or be able to talk about it to a close relative or a friend, was huge. And to watch that unfold before me was just crazily amazing, because I could never imagine, given how I felt about it and given how I didn't want to talk, and it is silencing, that once I could release, it allowed other women to release. And watching other women claim their voices in this journey has helped in my healing as well, because the more I see it, the more I can heal, because I see other dimensions of my story too. You know, and you can't do that on your own.
I think when your book is suddenly out there, you can feel a little bit vulnerable. I know I felt it suddenly. I mean, mine is very personal, and so I did feel a little bit exposed. But lots of people were saying to me, "Oh, you're so brave, Tess, you're so brave." I'd never, ever felt brave. I never felt I was being brave. I was being honest, and being honest is utterly freeing. Just saying, this is how it is for me. I don't really care what you think. This is how it is for me. And in the process of writing the book as well, I learned, there was a huge big chunk about other people's children in my life and how fabulous they are and my relationship with them, blah, blah, blah. And my publisher said to me, Claire Christian, she said, Tess, that section, your voice changes. So, I don't think so. Well, anyway, yeah, obviously, you know what you're talking about. I had a look at it, and I thought, that's what I think people want to hear. That isn't me. I chucked out, I don't know, thousands of words, and I wrote a paragraph basically saying, I've got some young people in my life who are very precious, but they're not you, my unborn children. They are not you. They are not the son and daughter I never had. And that was utterly sort of almost liberating, that there was a part of me that I was trying to always, no, I'm fine, because, I've got your kids to take to the cinema. Lucky me. So to be able to actually just be totally honest. Yeah, it felt good.
Can I also say that when I was so at the beginning, I didn't even know whether I would publish that I was writing, but then I thought this could affect my professional standing, to be entirely honest, because that's why people say as a mother, or that's why women write on their CV how many children they have, because somehow it's a statement about competence. And so I was thinking, what's going to do to my career and to my professional standing as I'm a professor to say that I'm childless? So somehow I felt that it would diminish my authority or my competence even. And so that's why probably that's also part of the reason why I integrated research and why I wanted this research to be absolutely, as strong, as solid as it can be. Also because I had done a study about the representation of the childless in movies, and invariably the childless women are completely crazy. So another worry was that I would be the crazy childless who now has written a book, and so I needed to be beyond critique, and I needed this to be as solid as it could be. But that's a real problem. So these are the kind of dilemmas we face when we come out.
Yeah, because you're exposing yourself literally to not just the community where you feel safe.
Exactly.
But like you say, to mothers, to parents, and it's like they're going to have a completely different mindset to you. And also because we know of that as a mother, we're afraid that they're going to start judging us because as a mother, why are you writing about childlessness and questioning? It's like, no, I'm writing about, it's in the same way you can write about a mum, I can write about being childless. But yeah, it's finding our own self, isn't it?
Although I would just like to say that well, two things really. Firstly, I don't know about the rest of you, but I have had nothing but, I think in this social media age, we're really so worried about putting our darkest places online, but I've had nothing but support from the world. And also I have to say that my books have totally bridged my relationships with so many women who are mothers that I think wouldn't have happened without my book. Because I think one of the things that you think, I felt, I don't want to generalize about it, but it's that I felt like I had childless and inadequate written all over my body that everybody could see. And what I realized is when I wrote my truth, wrote my story, is it's just one small part of me, and that everybody sees the rest. You just see this thing, but everyone sees everything else. And I just have had nothing but support, particularly from women who are mothers. And that's been amazing. I don't know if other people have experienced the same.
That's brilliant though, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But I think, like you say, I think sometimes it helps the fact that it's a book. It must be real because it's in a book, it's on a page, rather than just a tweet or a post in Facebook. Whereas it's a book, it's a solid thing, and it's got some sort of strength and backing to it. But I agree, like you say, is that back being childless. I said this week, and I said, this is what I was like at the beginning. That was my childlessness. And now it's behind there. And I'm in front of it.
Yeah.
So the books give you that strength.
Yeah, there's a sense of reclaiming the power and reclaiming the narrative around it. Because, when Tessa was talking, it just reminded me of how diminishing the whole experience can be. And it is absolutely scary. And I found with it, I could reclaim my power. So no one could, and I've had positive experiences as well, but I remember thinking no one can now say anything to me about it because actually I've said it already. So I've owned it, and that gave me a lot more, it felt more powerful to own it. And then also because it is a book, if I do come, because people still try and fix me, even now, people will still try and fix me. I don't get it. I've told you where I'm at, I'm comfortable, I'm okay with it. This doesn't help, and they will still do it. But it gives me, in a way, a tool. And I've heard some of the other women in the book also would say, it gives them a tool to say, look, just read this and leave me alone. So it gives us a tool to be able to say, look, here you go. if you can't hear it from my lips, go and read it and sit with that yourself, because sometimes I think it is easier for people to detach from me being Yvonne and go, oh my God, let me hear all these stories, and now I see where you guys are coming from, because it in a way gives it a more rounded look. It's not just about me going, I'm sad, or whatever, you know, I'm saying about it at that time. They're seeing other people's stories, so it gives them something more concrete in a way to kind of hold on to and start seeing different levels, different aspects, different points of view around it.
100%. I think that's a good thing that I say to people. Well, Childless Week, like what you said there, it's not about me or I, it's about us. I always say to people, you might not have the words, look for a story that resonates with you and share that one. And then people can't say it's just you, because you can say, look, I'm showing you the proof here. There's other people out there that feel the same and that are validating how you feel. Yeah, really important.
Can I jump on that? It's for us, and I think this ties also with some comments. I'm not reading all of them, so sorry if I see some and I'm missing others, about negative comments that have been received when one comes out, because yeah, I think it's coming out almost as a gender thing, like it's a turning point and you can't come back after that. Yeah, I think I also received some negative comments from some commentary articles that I wrote in the Norwegian media. And okay, I think the overwhelming majority of them were positive, but then there are also some critical ones. And they were the three first comments that I found after the first article that I had published. And I read them and I wanted to reply. And then I thought, okay, from now on, I'm not going to read anymore any of the comments, because I'm not doing it for me. I don't care what people think. I'm doing it for a bigger cause. And in fact, I was very inspired in this. I think we can be inspired by other activists, not only gender activists, about their coming out, but also I was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, where one activist was being interviewed and they were saying how it's important to take care of yourself for bringing forward the cause. And so I really realized that I really don't need to read these comments, because I have something bigger here to do and it's important, and I shouldn't let this affect me. So I think, yeah, it really helps me to think that this is not just for me.
Yes, I mostly had supportive, like you, Jessica. The odd that weren't so. And I mean, I did my book launch. I live in a very small community, and it was wonderfully supported by friends, family, and loads of local people. And I don't know, went to another village event shortly afterwards, and one of the lady there had read my book, and she said, "Oh, Tess, do you know we've got grown-up kids. It's not all roses. They're a nightmare." And I thought, oh, do you know, I hadn't ever thought kids might be, you know, a pain in the arse. And I just thought, now, and I just sort of nodded there. And I just thought, what do I want to take from this is that, you know, some people are blessed with empathy. Some people get you, want to understand you, want to get this right. And there are some that just don't get it. They're just not, you know, so I just think, well, I'm not going to waste my time.
Sorry.
No, carry. I mean, I just feel, you know, that's that. I've told my story. You didn't get it, or you wanted to then counter it. Fine, you know, that's your opinion. I know that most people were, had felt they fully understood me. And I think, in fact, Jessica, you said to me, when we were chatting before my book came out, that I would be surprised by the reaction of some people, and you were bang on, because it was funny for me, because some of my dearest friends who have actually been wonderful and have said the right things were the ones who came to me and said, "Oh God, I wasn't the friend I should have been to you." I said, "Well, actually, yes, you were." And other friends who most definitely haven't been, didn't seem to even realise that, you know, that some of the things they'd said to me had been insensitive and hurtful. So that had just washed over them. So again, I think, you know, rather than battling to make everyone understand how it is for you, just to say, well, that's my story, and that is how it is for me.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
I mean, I still talk about that, Tess, which is that, I mean, I just think this is true of life, really, that like the people, like some people that you know, like you're really close to just don't do the right thing in times of need, and other people who you're not very close to at all just excel themselves. And it's that, I just think that's human behavior in some respects. But it's interesting what you're saying about that woman, because I would just say, like, I always, because of course we all get those comments and they're difficult and they hurt, but I also always try and go, well, she's just trying to make you feel better, and she's doing it in the wrong way. Of course, she's saying the wrong thing.
Yes, she is. You're right. She's got the right motive.
Yeah, I don't think it's coming from a place of cruelty. She just doesn't understand. And so this is what I think is so important about us writing our books and Steph doing World Childless Week, is that we have to get this out there, because we have to find a language, don't we? And I you know, like another thing that I've written about and I talk about a lot, which is that there isn't this word in the English language for feeling happy for someone and sad for yourself at the same time, which is exactly how one feels. And I still feel it, even, you know, when someone tells me that they are pregnant, I still feel happy for them and sad for myself at the same time. And there is not a language or a word to describe what that feels like, apart from I call it melanjoy. So I just feel like we need to have these conversations so people understand, because I don't think that woman was trying to hurt you. She was just trying to make you feel better. So, and I guess that's what I hope.
Yeah, you are right. She was just trying to make me feel better. And you're talking about you're still struggling with pregnancy news. I mean, quite recently, just before Christmas, a young couple across the valley from us came around and they're with this picture of the scan, and I had that sick to the stomach feeling that I haven't felt for about 20 odd years. I thought, oh goodness sake, what's that all about? Anyway, you know, on we go with it. And then they had their child in June just gone, and he bought the book for his wife, blah blah blah, and he sent a message to my husband and said, I've got some photographs of the baby. Will Tess be okay if I send them to her? I just want to check with you first. And I thought, well, how, this is a lad, you know, and I thought, that is so sweet. And Tessa said, yeah, of course, she'd be delighted to see the photographs. But he just took that extra little step to be thoughtful, to say, yeah, I'm not just going to blam all the photographs at her and expect her to be happy about it. And I thought, oh, well, that's, you know, that just made that feeling feel fine.
I'm going to slightly backtrack here then before you jump in again. It's so hard to get distracted because we've got so much we want to say.
Oh, about yes, I know, we're not keeping the
lines of interest. No, it doesn't matter about that. It's really interesting what you're coming out with. But I think, like you say, sometimes people come up with comments because they want to try and fix us, because they think we're broken and they've got the answer. Similar to the adoption question. They think we haven't thought of it and that they're trying to help us and give us a solution. So what was it that you actually found from your book that helped to fix you, if anything? All look at the eyes, are all going to the left and they're thinking, oh, what helped me? Because obviously we're talking about the, you know, the healing process of writing. So was the one part of it that made you think, actually, that helped me?
I think for me, writing is a dear friend of mine who does meditation and everything, and I just fall asleep when I try and meditate. She said to me, Tess, writing is your meditation. And I do. I write stuff out. I write it out. And one or two people are commenting saying, oh, you know, how can I write a book and everything? Just write it out. Just write. I don't know what the hell to write about today. I am fed up, or I am happy, or I just write everything out. And I have realized that on days when I haven't done a lot of journaling or anything, and I'm starting to feel out of sorts, I know now that that's why. And I learnt that from writing the book, really, that writing stuff out for me is soothing. It's a salve. And And also I was sort of brought up to be not a sort of a part my own trumpet, sort of, you know, don't be precocious and be, you know, modest, etc. In my journals, in my pages, I can say how bloody fantastic I am. I can say how wonderful everything is. And so yes, get positives and negatives. Just write it all out. And I think that's what I learned from writing my book, particularly, that getting those thoughts down and also writing it with a pen on a piece of paper. I write with a fountain pen, brown ink. I write it, and I just, that's kind of makes it, I think, my ritual, my me time. So I think, yeah, whichever way, just, I think what we're saying from this is really that you'll find your own way, and writing really was the way for me.
I can also say something. Okay, I've already mentioned getting the poison out by telling your own story. But if I reflect on what I did more precisely, what I did was I allowed myself to feel the scope and the depth of the grief, because my challenge was actually to make people understand what it means and how it feels to be childless. And I realized that the language that we have in academia is not appropriate. It's completely inadequate. So I needed to develop a different language, and I call it the language of feeling in the body. It's a language through which I'm trying to bring you, the reader, into my world, because I realized that I can't just tell you what it's like. I have to make you feel and share into the experience. So for me, the challenge was how to convey the experience in its most concrete way. And so I also needed to make the reader feel. And so in order to make them feel, I needed to understand what I was feeling. And so there was this continuous process of resonance between what do I feel? And it was really, really painful. And what I'm writing. And then this, is this the right word rather, or is it's the right word? Because you are trying to convey an entire world. That's a problem. And the words are insufficient. But then you try and do the best job that you can. And at the end, this has been an extremely painful process, but I think it's been very useful, because I've just started this weekend a course to become a trauma therapist. And the way to basically integrate the trauma, to overcome a trauma, is actually to allow yourself to feel the trauma. Because you're trying to avoid it in all possible ways, and it's easy just to think about other things, to do lots of things, and not to think about the grief that you have. So the most difficult thing is actually to face the grief, and trying to write down your feelings. I think that's the best way to do it. It's painful, but again, you just need a little poison, a little drop of poison out of yourself at a time. Yes.
Actually, listening to Cristina, it reminded me. So I was listening to a podcast with Brené Brown and Ashley C. Ford, and it was about writing your story. And to quote, "The trauma of keeping the secret is often greater than the trauma itself." And that's when I heard Cristina, that's what it reminded me of. And for me, like I wouldn't call it fixing. I call it made me whole. Because before owning my story, I was fragmented. So I had this secret that I was hiding from everyone else. And then I had the Yvonne that the world presented, which was, yeah, I'm okay, I'm happy, I'm this and this. And no one saw the sadness and grief. And I didn't even own it. And I was trying to hide it and shut it down. And I didn't have a language for it. So writing my story and owning it, it made me whole again. And it reconciled all those fragmented parts of me. And it helped me to walk on in actually a stronger way. In a much more stronger way than I could before. I don't have to tell my story to people. I can tell it how I want, but owning it and being okay with it meant that I could stand with it, and therefore I could tell it how I wanted, instead of it being forced out of me or hiding it because I was too ashamed. Very different position to be in, yeah.
And I would just say that I discovered a passion in writing that brings me joy, complete joy. And for a lot of my life, there hasn't been a lot of joy. And so it was transformational in that respect.
No, it's good, isn't it? Like you say, it's amazing just getting the words out on the paper, even if they're just 4-letter words, and you write the same word over and over and over again. You start off like writing it really aggressively, and it might be your pen goes through the paper, but the more you write it, the less pressure you put on the pen. And it's the same with when you use other words and start actually saying a story, the pressure slowly gets released. And it's not saying after the first page or the first 10 pages or 100 or 1,000, but it's that repetition of releasing your story when no one's going to judge you with the safety of a piece of paper or on a computer keyboard. Because for me, the reason I say about World Childless and the reason I love people sharing the story so much is I was on the keyboard and you could hear me thumping away on the keys, just getting my words out in these support groups. And it was just a release. And it was like almost like as the anger calmed down from writing the words out, I didn't have to thump the keyboard so much. I could type more calmly and still get myself out and my expression and my story and things. So, you know, the healing power of words. Definitely. Really. It's really interesting to hear all the different ways that you've used that in your books and your work and things like that. So here's a question for you. Is there something in your book that you wish you'd left out, or is there something in your book you wish you'd put in? Time for the thinking again.
Well, I some people have asked me, why did I put my first husband's actual name in the book, and why didn't I use a pseudonym? And I have since thought, well, maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have put a different name. But the reason I had his name and my now husband's name was that I was, you know, for me, while I was writing it to my children. I wasn't writing a book that's going to be published and read by everybody else. I was just writing a big long letter, and putting a different name in and then explaining the different name would have just been bonkers. It would have felt like it's not a letter to them. So that was my only little qualm, that maybe, I mean, I didn't say anything horrible about him anyway, really. So I thought, oh, well, you know, but that was my little sort of, a little twinge of maybe I shouldn't have done that.
That's good though. So it means everything you put in about your actual children and about you was right.
Yeah.
Which is the big thing about the book. Like you said, the only qualm was something that really was coincidentally on the sideline.
Yeah, it's just a detail, really. So yeah, it's fine.
Anyone else, Jessica?
I'd say that it's taken me a long time to write both my books. I would say it took me 3 to 4 years to write each of them, and I'm now working on my third book. And again, so I'm never going to be a writer that like churns out 4 books a year. And they're really sort of worked carefully on. However, I would say, and there's nothing in it about myself or anyone else that I regret writing. Although my partner, now my former partner, and I always had a bit of a tussle about him in the books, but I think he comes out, everyone thinks he comes out very nicely. But what I would say, and I don't know if the others feel this, is there's one thing about just writing your journal for yourself where you can write absolutely anything down. And there's another thing about knowing that you're writing for other people to read. And it is difficult because you'll have a day where you think you've written a page that you think is amazing. And then the next day you'll read it back and you'll think it's absolute shit. And there is like, it is, you know, and I think like whenever you ask a writer what their favorite book is, they always say it's the book that I'm writing now. So like there is an element of sort of looking back, you know, on your first, or for me, on my earlier books, and thinking like, well, I want to be an even better writer, you know. So but I also, I do love them both. Like I think someone said earlier, they are in a way my children, definitely.
Cristina, any thoughts on it?
Yes. Okay, the book I published was is based on a manuscript that was double as long. And so I had to cut so much out. And in fact, I decided that this first book was going this way, and I saved all the most evocative parts for a second book, which I am working on. I've been working on for a while, but there's been COVID and all life happens, as you know. But it will come out, hopefully with the title Writing About Silence, and it's going to focus more on precisely on this challenge of conveying the experience of silence. How do you convey it through words? And yeah, so having said that, I saved all this for the second book. You know, in academia, you can't go on tangents. Anything that's there needs to be there. It must be there for a reason. So whatever is there for a reason. So I'm going to say that I'm totally happy with what's there. So I'm happy as it is.
Go on then, Yvonne.
So for me, like as I said earlier, there was parts of the story that I did want to leave out, and I'm so glad that I didn't. I'm glad I had the courage to keep it all in. And when I think about it, there isn't anything I would take out or add to it. And I think also as well, I wrote the version of my story that I could write at the time. You know, if I was to write it again, it would probably be very different. There's going to be elements that would be there, but I'm sure it would be very different because of who I am now. So I think there's also about a piece around actually that's who, and it's a reflection of who I was then and how I saw me at that time. So for me, it's like, no, that's beautiful because that's who Yvonne was then, and that's the story that needed to be heard and told at that time.
That's good. Okay then. So let me think. I can't believe the time's flown by already, and it's like there's so much more I know all of you could talk about, and it's just, you know, each one of you could do an hour on your own with the information that you can pass on to people to help them about the power of words. So I'm just thinking, okay, let me think. Do you think you've achieved what you wanted to achieve from your book? And if so, what was it you wanted to achieve? Was it just to tell your story? I've just got nodding heads, so it looks like
Yeah.
No, but isn't that brilliant to sort of say that yes, it just shows the power behind your books and what they meant for you at the time and now today as well. The time that has elapsed. And I think that's incredibly important. I think a lot of people have realised from listening to you how powerful the power of the pen, as they would say, is to get your story down. So people are sort of saying, you know, they'd like to write a book, they don't know how to start.
Right.
What was your spark that actually made you go, I'm not just going to think about it, I'm going to do it? Or was it just like a scribble in a book on one day?
I mean, I started with, I suppose, journaling and blogging. I think the key, like for me, it wasn't about when writing wasn't about forming a book. That came late. I think I would just say write, because it all kind of comes together and you'll see what you want to do when you write. I think if you I feel like this anyway, if you think I just have to have a book and I want to write it as a book, it can be quite constraining and difficult. But if you just write and let it go and it will take on the life, and you will start to see, and it will start to grow, and it will do, you know, it will evolve as you go along. But the key is write. Let it out, let those words out of your head, let them flow, and let that release happen, and you'll see it start to grow and form how you would like it to go.
Yeah, I agree with that, Yvonne, because when I was first writing just as a straight memoir, it felt a bit clunky and a bit hard work. And once I was writing to the children, then it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was almost an indulgence. So yeah, and that just really just came to me by accident. So I think the thing is to just start, basically. Just write some words down. I mean, I used to write, well, I have finished the novels. I was writing fiction before. And it surprised me actually that the first thing that gets published is my memoir. But yeah, I'm hoping to get some fiction out there at some point. But yeah, no, just do it. I think that's what I would advise.
I would agree with that. Like writing is like a muscle, you know, like it's good to do it regularly, to work it regularly. And like even if you just like write for 10 minutes a day. And what you'll find is if you start writing for 10 minutes a day and you're enjoying the process, then you will start to write for longer. And then, you know, like soon you will have more and more words. And I think the key thing is enjoying the process, because everybody has a book in them, but not everyone will write their book. And that is fine, you know, because you've got to, you know, enjoy it, you know, and also enjoy the writing of it, because actually then once you've got a book and you've got to get it out into the world, or you want to get it out into the world, that's a whole other thing that can be hard and difficult. So I would just like enjoy the process of writing it, and do a little bit every day if you can.
I cannot agree more with this kind of disciplined way of writing. However, although I would like to agree with that, and sometimes I'm forced to do it like that. I think I'm also very instinctive, and so sometimes I don't plan to write, and then I feel, I mean, it's almost sorry for this metaphor, but it's like throwing up, and it has to come out in some way, and maybe a poem can come out in 5 minutes because it's been kind of there for such a long time, and you just have to throw it on the paper. But I would say don't start with the idea of writing a book. Just start thinking about writing for yourself. And even at the beginning, I didn't even think I could actually publish this. So I thought, well, if anything, I'll just write it for myself, something I'm happy with. And so I would say I think it places a lot of pressure on you if you think you're writing a book. It looks like a big thing. So just think about, I'm going to write what I feel like today. And then you write one sentence, and maybe you write one page, and then you write another page. And then maybe you will have a book, but it's not compulsory. Think about your well-being.
That's brilliant. I think it's true. Like you say, it's not thinking about, oh, there's a book. It's one piece of paper, or it's one word, and it doesn't have to be grammatically correct. The spelling doesn't have to be good. And it's all about not comparing what you're doing to anybody else, and not even to yourself. It's just literally that moment in time and that day and that pen, that piece of paper, and that's all you need to focus on, and nothing bigger or wider. And I think you've all summed that up amazingly for everything you've said today. The comments are going mad. Lots of people are thanking you, and sadly it's the end, I suppose. We've had an hour. Yeah, so Jessica, Tessa, Cristina, Yvonne, thank you so much for coming today and having this chat and enlightening me with your thoughts as well, as much as everybody else. It has been really wonderful, and I hope we can do it again one day.
And thank you, Steph, for bringing us together.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Steph.
you.
You're welcome.
And thank you to everyone who participated.
Yes.
Oh yes, thank you to
really
everybody
enjoyed it.
there.
It was
Lovely.
like, yeah, nice to know you there.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.
Bye.